Hi, my name is Pastor Hal York, and welcome to Truth in the Trenches. Today we're going to be in Proverbs chapter 5. As we've stated in our series on Proverbs over and over again, chapters 5 through 7 talk about the dangers of immorality, adultery, sex outside of marriage, and they talk about it almost exclusively. But as I've mentioned many times, that 1 out of 10 verses in the first 10 chapters of Proverbs deals with the subject of sexual sin. But chapters 5 and 6, almost every verse deals with it. But it's a common and reoccurring theme in the book of Proverbs because the book of Proverbs is about wise living, how to live our lives wisely in the fear of God. And in doing so, he keeps bringing us back to this very, very important subject about the marriage, about family, and the threats to both. And certainly there's no greater threat to the family and to marriage than sexual sin. But another reason that he keeps bringing this up is the power of sexual temptation. It is a very real threat to every marriage and must be guarded against with diligence. We are bombarded with it in our culture. We are living in a society which does not warn against it, but it sets it forth in just about every way possible as something very benign or harmless. It's almost recreational in young people today, and that is tragic, and we've discussed this many times before. But we cannot hear it enough. For the lips of an adulteress drip honey, and smoother than oil is her speech, but in the end she is bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. We cannot hear that enough. It's something that is very easy to forget. It's very easy to get lured into it because sin is blinding. All sin is blinding. All sin is hardening. But there's probably no sin more blinding and hardening than sexual sin. And people by nature try to justify this sin more than any other because it is a sin like any other. It's a sin against our own bodies. On Wednesday, we looked at Proverbs 3:5, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. That's especially relevant and urgent when it comes to this subject. Why? Well, we just read it in verses 3 to 4. It never delivers what it promises. It promises pleasure, and the pleasures last for a season, but it doesn't tell you about the pain and the heartache. In the end, it says she's as bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. In the end, those are very haunting words, aren't they? When it's all said and done, when it's over, it may take a week, it may take a day, it may take a month, it may take years. In the end, she's as bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. She destroys. Recently, we've been made aware of a well-known apologist. I won't say his name, but you know who he is. Look at what it's done to his family, his ministry, his life. He's no longer here. But everything has been destroyed. Everything. It took years. But in the end, it's as bitter as wormwood. It destroys everything it touches. That's the end. That's what Satan is hiding behind the promise of pleasure and excitement. You know the effectiveness of a lure when you're fishing by how well it hides the hook. There's always a hook. There's a boatload of hurt, a boatload of pain and embarrassment and heartache and heartbreak. In the end, it bites. Her feet go down to death. It is not the path to life, it is the path to death. Her feet take hold of Sheol, flirting with hell. It is not the path to joy, life, and peace, it's the path to misery. When you misuse and abuse sex, you're tarnishing something God created for good in marriage. He said it was very good. It's not ours to decide how to use it. It belongs to God. It is His gift to mankind. And when you misuse it, you will be the loser in the end. How many young people's lives have been ruined because of this? Disease, pregnancy, the guilt. How many young people's lives I wonder started down this path and try to hide the hurt, try to quiet in a guilty conscience. They started taking drugs because of their sexual immorality. Sometimes you wonder which came first. Often it's sexual immorality because it carries a very heavy price tag when we misuse what God gives as something very good. Her ways are unstable, shaky. It affects all other aspects of life, the lying, the cover-up, the deceitfulness. So remember, young person, older person, doesn't matter who, Sadly, Solomon didn't listen to himself, and in the end, he didn't finish well. But Solomon says to us, listen to me. Yes, there's forgiveness for sexual sin, but there's probably no other sin that has greater, longer lasting consequences than this. So give attention to wisdom. Incline your ear to my understanding. There are some things we need to be reminded of over and over and over again, and this is one of them. Because we live in a culture we can't turn around without seeing it in some way or another, some form being pushed at us, distorted, or whatever way you want to look at it. It's everywhere. And there's no fear of God before the people's eyes who are promoting it. But it doesn't protect them from the consequences. So wisdom says, pay attention to your ways. Guard your heart, for out of it are the issues of life. We cannot be warned too many times. That's why I hope we don't get tired of it. Because it's in Proverbs all the way through the book. And we're going to bump into it time and time again. Because God wants to guard us and protect us in the trenches of life, that we might live our lives to the glory of God and the good of others. May God bless.